Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 36 of Bell to Bell with Bobby Blaze. I am your host, the Professor Jeremy Vilmur, and joining us now, the reigning and defending Beat the TV champion of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, Bobby Blaze.
Hey, now, thank you, man. It's good to hear from you, Professor. I'm always glad to be back here with my good friend, the Professor. Yes, reigning TV champion, for you people that don't know, on a Smoky Mountain. Not heavyweight champion, because I had someone approach me last night about that, and that's not the case. But as long as Jim Cornette doesn't bring back the TV and I don't have to do a job for someone, I'll forever be the last Smoky Mountain TV champion, beat the TV champion. So anyway, man, what's going on with you? I got a couple of things to talk about real briefly, and we got something special today.
Yes, we do. Can I share a story real quick before we get too far into this?
I don't know why not.
A week or so back, I was looking for that picture you sent me from Sunday Bloody Sunday. And my grandson sees it. And he's, oh, what happened to him? And so I'm trying to explain pro wrestling to him and why it would get bloody. And then a couple days go by, and he calls me Jeremy or Grandpa. So he goes, Jeremy, can I see that picture of your dead friend again?
Oh, man, gee, thanks.
He's not dead. He's not dead. Yeah. He's okay. I talk to him every weekend.
Yeah, tell him I just went to work and got in a fight, you know?
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool, man. That's pretty. I'm alive, man. I'm alive. With that said, you know what? I want to give a quick shout out to a couple people real quick. One, to FTC. They did a heck of a show last night over in Ohio, Ironton, Ohio. And I want to say from Charleston, West Virginia, Huntington, West Virginia, Ironton, Ohio, and Ashland, Kentucky, this tri-state area. I saw so many people from Ashland. It was unreal. They did a sold-out show. I was really happy about that, and I just got to get this out there. Some of the local talent, man, I was so proud of how they did. I'm just speaking volumes for all of them. They put on a first-class show last night, and all the talent that worked within hour and a half from here that come in regular. Everyone done a very, very good performance last night. And Jeremy, you're not ready for this, but you kind of brought it up pre-taping there. I just want to say this. I got a couple of special thank yous, and a big, big thank you to you, Jeremy, for the Bell to Bell Twitter page. Man, we've got over 1,900 people there. You put it up, you produce it, and you edit the show. This thing couldn't be done without you. I just want to say on the air, personally, thank you so much for helping and taking care of this podcast and taking care of the Twitter page. And that's at Bell to Bell Blaze. If you haven't followed us on Twitter, that's the joint account. Also, I want to give a shout out to Tex Johnson. He doesn't like those shout outs, but I think you'll like this one because the YouTube channel has over 900. And since I wrote that note, Jeremy has informed me it's over 950 subscribers. If you don't care, folks, tell a friend. Go to the YouTube page. It's tinyurl.com/BBBB video. And I just want to say thanks to Jeremy, thanks to Tex, and we've got a really good podcast. Anything to say, Jeremy? Because I'm going to shift gears in a minute because we've got something special today. I just want to let you know I appreciate you, man.
Bobby, I appreciate that, and I promised myself I wouldn't cry in front of the Academy. I do want to say that our Paul Orndorff video has caught frickin' fire over on YouTube. 28,000 views so far.
Good Lord. See, I saw it at 26,000 early this morning. That's great, guys. Keep it up. Keep it up. Remember, tinyurl.com/BBBB video for that. And follow Jeremy at the Geekish Cast on Twitter. Follow me at Bobby Blaze 744. And with that said, Jeremy, I'm going to shift gears real quick and tell you a real quick story, and we'll go to someone special we got with us today, okay?
Sounds good to me.
The old ICW, International Championship Wrestling, was well known here in the Kentucky area, out into Missouri, out to the western part of Kentucky. They did spot shows, they did house shows, they did weekly, they had TV. It was owned by Angelo Poffo, father of Leapin' Lanny and the Macho Man Randy Savage. And they used to have a good little show. The Hustler Rip Rogers, Pez Watley, Bob Orton Jr., they just, the Great Malenko, had a lot of people coming there to work. You talking outlaw, man, they had it. But they used to do different things around East Town. They brought bears. They did this. They did that. But at one time, the person I'm going to bring to the show, is no secret. I was sitting here eating lunch one day. I was listening to the 605. Hey, Brian Lash, big shout out, man. You got a wonderful, fucking awesome podcast. Keep up the good work with all you're doing over there. But, man, I was listening to this podcast. I was like, where does he get these guests at? And he found this guy, William Harding, man. And he was talking about something I really remember. I wasn't there in Frankfort where this gentleman's from or where it took place. I'm just going to tell you, I was moved by his story. And since then, I've met him in person. I think it was 2 years ago next month. And he is the Sugar Hold Challenge champion. And he's going to tell you all about that. It's our very, very first guest on the show, an interview on the show. So, William, welcome to the Bell to Bell with Bobby Blaze podcast. It's William Harding, folks.
Thank you, Bobby. Hey, Jeremy. How you doing?
Doing well, William. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good down here.
So we are glad to hear it, and we are glad to have you on. So I'm trying to think of the best way to segue into your story here. William, why don't you tell us a little bit about your relationship to wrestling, judo, and things like that?
Well, I was born in Frankfort, Kentucky. I started martial arts the day right after Bruce Lee died, because they showed a lot of promos of his death that night, and that really intrigued me. And I told my mother the next day I wanted to start taking martial arts, so she took me down to the YMCA and signed me up for karate classes, and I stayed with that for a very long time. And in 1977, I started cross-training in judo, and that's what pretty much led me up to this challenge. I was also a huge fan of the Olympics. We had gone through, like the 1976 bicentennial. I was very patriotic during that time. We went to the 1980 Miracle on Ice. Was just a great story in itself. And then the ICW came along. And actually, before I get to that, my father was a police officer, and he used to work the Frankfort Convention Center. And in the early to mid-'70s, the Memphis group used to come up there. Jerry Jarrett, Tojo, Jerry Lawler, all those guys would come up there. And I had a special job there because since my father was a police officer, I got to sit backstage with those guys, and I was like the official door opener for all these guys when I was about 12, 13 years old. And it was great getting to meet all those guys, and I had a lot of special memories of that. And when the ICW came around, kind of tried to relive those memories. I started going to the shows and everything. And then one day I'm sitting around watching television there at the house in Frankfort, and I'm watching the ICW program, and Bob Roop comes out. Now, Bob Roop is a former Olympian, 1968 Mexico City Games. He placed 7th there. He lost to the eventual gold medalist, Alexander Medved. And before that, he was an Iowa State wrestling champion in his high school senior year, had a perfect record of 27-0. He was Army Special Forces medic. He was in the All-Army wrestling team, All-Services wrestling team. He was the Southern Illinois University. Well, he went to Southern Illinois University, had a 66-18 record there. He won 4 NAAU All-American rankings and an NAAU championship. And he started becoming a professional wrestler in 1969. And he had a pretty distinguished career when he joined ICW. And I was sitting there one afternoon, I'm watching the show, and Bob comes out with this big bag. And he sits down and he announces that they're going to have a thing called the Sugar Hold Challenge. And it's this particular hold that I saw him do on the show several times. And he opened this bag up, and he started spreading these silver dollars across the table. And he says, open challenge, anybody can come in here and beat this hold, you win 1,000 silver dollars. Now, this interested me on so many levels because during those years I was taking martial arts, there wasn't really a lot of tournaments or anything else that you could be part of, and I was always looking for a challenge. And I mean, this was like the ultimate challenge. I mean, here was an Olympian saying, hey, come in here, test yourself, see what you can do. And the first thing I did was I had to figure this hold out. And this is one of the things I remembered the last 2 years. Back then, VCRs had just come out. And we didn't have one because they were incredibly expensive. So I couldn't go back and still frame it or anything. And the only other way I had captured pictures off TV was these little 60-second Polaroid cameras, the old ones where you just take a picture and it pops out and you just wave it for a while until the picture shows up. So what I did is I went back to my room and I got a notebook out and I started sketching this thing out, sketching the hold out. So I'm sitting there in this leather ottoman in the living room. The show's still on, but I'm not really paying attention to it now. And I'm sketching this thing out and I get done with it and I'm looking at it for like 30 minutes, trying to figure out what I know to do to get it out of this hold. And eventually I'm just going, damn, this is a good hold. There's this leather ottoman in front of me, and I throw the sketch pad down on it. I get up and I go to the kitchen. I get a glass of tea and I come back and I get ready to sit down, but now I'm looking at it from the side. I see something that looks very familiar to me. I pick this sketch up and I said, if you turn it over and stand it vertical, it's a hip toss in judo. It's a perfect setup for a hip toss. Now, I was up at Bobby's house not too long ago, and we were going through some of this stuff, and I showed him this.
Other than trying to bash my head off the lampshade there.
Yeah.
Tell him that, William. Try to bash my head off the lampshade, okay? Don't forget that.
Yeah. Put him in a chokehold,
I was tapping out and no referee was around, damn it. Anyway.
So I'm looking at this thing. I'm like, that's a hip toss. So I put it down, and this challenge is now for a couple of weeks. So I call some friends of mine, and we go down to the YMCA and get some mats out, and I try this out, and it works. Basically what it is that if you've never seen a sugar hold, you're laying on your side, the person's behind you, but they're like with your ribs, and they reach over and they wrap the arm around the back of your head with your arms, and you grapevine the leg or arm bar in front of you, but Bob usually grapevine the leg. So I tested this with a couple of people, but I had to go pretty slow because the result of it was if you went fast with it, if you turned like I planned to rotate, you basically put their face into the mat. So if I went fast, I would basically bash somebody's face into the mat. But my goal was to try to get them over top of me so that I could get my legs out from under them. I could actually reverse the hold. And it worked. But the problem I had was that nobody that I met with or I practiced with was as big as Bob Root. So I go down there the night of the challenge. No, let me go back a little bit. I told my friends I was going to do this, and they knew about it. And I got a friend named David Shaw that I told about this, and he said, that dude's going to kill you. And that's what I heard from a lot of people. But I told them, I said, look, I got to go in there and try this. I said, I'm either going to win or they're going to carry me out on a stretcher, but I'm not giving up. I'm just going to do this. I'm not going to give up. So told my grandmother about it. She begged me not to do it. I told my grandfather about it. He said, you're not going to do that. And when I told my father about it, he absolutely forbid me from even going down there. So the night the challenge comes up, and I'm getting ready to leave, and my dad asks me where I'm going, and I said, I'm going to go down here and watch ICW. And he said, don't you get in the ring with that man. I said, okay, I won't get in, how that worked out. But I go down there, and I go in, and I go up into the corner of the arena where I'm by myself, but I see there's I look for the cameraman, and I'm sitting probably 50 feet away from the cameraman. And they start the show up, and there was about 3 or 4 matches before they finally got to the challenge. And every time they started a match, I put my head down and put my hands together, almost like in a prayer position, and just put my fingers on the bridge of my nose, and I closed my eyes because I didn't want to see any of the matches leading up to the challenge because I didn't want anything else in my mind other than the vision of that sugar hold, so I could keep that mental image in my mind when I got in there with him. So it's getting way along in the show, and right before intermission, they finally announce, we're going to do the sugar hold challenge. If you want to compete, come on down to the timekeeper's table, and we'll get you signed up. There were 4 of us total to go down to this timekeeper's table, and we're signing these releases and stuff, and there's 3 other guys in front of me. Bob and the referee come over to the side where we are, and he's looking at us, and he decides that he's going to take everybody by size. So that leaves me as the last person going in the ring because Bob at the time is being 6'2" and about 270 pounds. And me going in there, I was 5'7" and about 150 pounds. So
now,
the
William,
first guy gets in there.
William, can I interrupt you real quickly? How old were you at this time, please? Tell the people how old you were.
I was 19 years old.
Okay, 19 years old.
And the first guy that got in there, and I'll never forget this guy because he just had such a unique look. He was wearing this black silk shirt and these black blue jeans, and he had this Lyle Lovett type hairdo. And he got in there, and he laid down, and Bob put the sugar on him. And the referee said go, and I mean in like 3 seconds, this guy's screaming bloody murder. And he's just tapping like crazy. And Bob lets him go. And they bring the next guy in. He lasts about 10 seconds. And the third guy, I remember having a conversation with him. He was an Army guy, and he was the one I was worried about. He was a little bigger than I was, but he was pretty stout. And he got in there, and he made a pretty good go of it. He went about 15, 20 seconds before he finally tapped out. And I started going up the stairs, and I could hear this lady. The audience at this time, they really rooted point, just kind of laughing now because, nobody's making any kind of go of it. And I start going up the steps in the ring, and I could hear this lady behind me going, well, where's he going? So, and I get in the ring, and I don't even look the referee or Bob in the face because I'm looking at that tunic that he's wearing, the wrestling outfit he's wearing, because it's at USA, it's at Olympic wrestling outfit attire, and that just gets to me even to this day. Because I was just such a fan of the Olympics and everything. So I just walk over there. I don't even say anything to him. I just lay down on the mat. And I can hear Bob go, well, okay. So he gets down to hold on me. And my plan is I'm watching the referee's lips for when he's going to say go because I'm going between the G and the O because I have to get that first move off. I get that first move off before Bob starts cinching that hold in. And I'm also going to mention this too, is that I was just as flexible as a Gumby doll. I mean, I could just bend myself in ways that you wouldn't believe. So I'm watching the referee, and he says go. And I mean, as soon as he says that, I just twist my body as hard as I could, and I brought Bob over and put him face first into the mat. And now I got him locked up in an office. He didn't go all the way over, though. That was the problem. He's still about halfway across my back, and he's trying to get up, and I'm holding him down. And I've got my arm around his arm. My right arm's free, so I'm using it to kind of leverage myself up into him to keep him down. But since he didn't go all the way over, now I got to figure out how to get my legs out from underneath of him. So I don't know why I thought this, but the only thing that I could figure out was to do a one-arm with him on the back just to get him up far enough where I could slide my legs up or do like a little kind of bunny hop thing to kind of unweight him to get my legs out. So while I'm doing this, I've also got the power to raise my neck up and see what's going on. And at this point, everybody's screaming. Everybody's up on their feet. I could hear everybody shout, go Bill, go Bill. Where a minute ago, they were, it went from a pro wrestling crowd to like an MMA crowd like that fast. So I start doing this one-arm push-up, and I get him all the way up. I get all the way up, and I'm looking down toward my feet, and I'm trying to time this thing, but just like a millisecond before I'm going to do this, he grabs my left leg, flings me back around, trying to get me back to the starting position, except I went too far and I landed on my back. And as soon as I landed on my back, I kicked my legs up and I scissor-locked his head. My head is still cradled right arm, and I'm basing, my nose is like 8 inches away from the right side of my knee. So it's not a really comfortable position at all. But it gives me leverage because at this point, since I've got him scissor locked, what I'm doing is I'm pushing backwards using that scissor lock for leverage. So I'm also pulling his head away from his body in addition to like crushing his head at the same time. And I keep pushing backwards, and I just close my eyes at this point because I'm seeing a lot of stuff going on outside the ring, and I didn't need all the extraneous imagery, and I could feel what he was doing anyway. So I just closed my eyes. And I've got my arms behind my head on his arm, trying to pull it off. And I'm going back, and I could hear him saying to the referee, "Get this boy off me, he's killing me." And right as he did that, I pulled his arm off the back of my head, and now my head's free, and I roll him over to the side, and I released the scissor lock, and I basically put both feet in his chest and pushed him away. And I jump up to my feet, and the referee's still on the ground, Bob's still on the ground, and I turn around, and, I'm loose now. I throw my arms up, I turn around and look at the audience, I throw my arms up, and I'm like, yes, I just did this. And as soon as I turn back around, the referee's now on his feet, and he's saying, no, you didn't beat the time limit. It just goes crazy now. So now we get into this argument about this time limit because they never announced anything about it. And this is about it. And that's what's weird is that I'm deviating from the story just a little bit here. Bob and I did a CWF thing in Florida last year. And we discussed this because he said it was like a point of rebuttal. And I honestly believe this, that he was operating on the premise that there was a 1 minute time limit because they did this at a couple of other venues. I was operating on the premise it was you either tap out or you just keep going. So it's just kind of amazing how it worked out like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, and I believe him. I believe when he said there was a time limit.
Yeah. Let me interrupt again, William. This is fascinating, sure. But let me I want to say the word here, folks, is outlaw. ICW is known as their outlaw show in Kentucky. Back in the day, because William's going to continue his story here, but they would do these shows and they had tremendous talent and they would draw anywhere between 300 to 500 people just about anywhere they went, as far as I remember, because I went to shows in Ashland and Paintsville, and I still see posters floating around on social media where they've done Frankfort or Lexington or the channel or the cities they've done, William. But with the Poffos, Angelo was the main owner. And they also had some people that had invested into that, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? That they several people had invested into that, correct? So it wasn't just you're trying to win this $1,000 sugar hold challenge, and you've done it. You've escaped the hold. The place is going nuts. Everyone's seen you do it. And at that point, the referee says, "No, you didn't. You did not beat the 1 minute time limit." And that's where you're standing out in the middle of the ring. Is that correct? Pretty safe to say about the ICW and back in the day.
Yeah, Bob Rube, Bob Orton, Rip, and Roddy Garvin all owned 10%.
Okay, yeah,
of the company, and I think Malenko owned a percentage as well, and I think Angelo owned about 50% of it.
Yeah, okay.
It may be different. That's what I was told.
Right. I've heard the same thing.
It's costing them money out of their pocket. Yeah.
That was my point. Yes, thank you.
So we're now arguing about this in the ring. It's me and Bob and the referee arguing about this thing in the ring. And I don't know anything about the nefarious history of this hold. I just know what I saw on television and everything. But I'm arguing I said, if you don't think I beat this hold, then get your ass back down there and we'll do it again. And he just got this look on his face like, You really want to do this again? Now, let me tell you, this is where it changes for me. And this was a really significant thing because Bob said, hold still for a minute. So I don't know what he's going to do. And he reaches up and he grabs my head and he's looking at my face. And he says, you've ruptured a bunch of blood vessels in your eye. And I didn't know this at the time, and my eye was just full of blood. It just seemed like there was a tinge of red, but I didn't know what he was talking about. But to me at that point, it didn't matter. I wanted to get back down there and do it again. He wouldn't let me do it. He wouldn't let me do it because he didn't want to see me get injured any further. And we argued about it a little bit more. And the referee and they decided that, they'd had enough, and they got out of the ring and they walked away. So, to be fair, Bob helped me right there. I think if it had been anybody else, they probably would have got back down there and done it again. But, you could tell that he was being a good guy about it. I didn't think it at the time, but I'll say it now.
Yeah.
So they left the ring. The crowd is just going nuts. They're booing. I walk over to the ring ropes, and I'm just standing there staring at this entrance where they come out. I can hear somebody shouting my name, and I look down, and there's a guy I know from high school. His name's Steve Otten. He's sitting in the front row with his girlfriend. And he said, Bill, what's going on? And I said, Steve, I don't think they're going to pay me. He said, well, go over there and grab the microphone. Fantastic idea. So I walk over to the – wait a minute, I got ahead of myself here. After Bob and the referee left the ring, I went over to the timekeeper's table, and I asked them, I said, was there a 1 minute time limit? And there was this young man, young woman sitting there, and they both said yes. And I said, okay, well, if there was a time limit, then how are you keeping time? Because I don't see a watch on either one of you. There's no clock here. There's no visible clock in the arena. And I said, you don't even have a stopwatch. So they don't say anything. They just look at each other for a second, and they get up and they walk away. They just walk back to the dressing room. That's when I went to the side, and Steve told me, go grab the mic. So I walked back over there. I grabbed the mic off the table and turn this thing on and say, I want my money now, because now I'm mad. I didn't go into this thing for the money, but at this point, it was like, if you're going to cheat me out of this, you're going to pay me. Okay, I'm coming after you guys. It goes on for a while, and I tell the audience, I said, look, I got here to compete fair and square. You guys got to pay me. The crowd starts this chant, pay him, pay him, pay him. Nothing happens for about 5 minutes. So I'm still standing there, and I'm going off, and this shadowy figure comes out of the dressing room, and he's walking toward the ring, and he gets about halfway up there, and I recognize the guy. It's Bob Orton Jr. And he gets up to the ring, and he's standing there at the ropes, and he says, hey, boy, come here. Put the mic down. Come over here. So I put the mic down, and I walk over there, and I've got my hands on the second rope, and my head's near the top rope, and I'm listening to him, and he said, Bob Roop's a good, and it would be best interest to forget about all this and just get out of the ring. Otherwise, I'm going to get in there and put you in a hole that makes your tongue suck your dick. Okay. The only thing I could think of at that point, I don't remember saying anything to him, but the only thing that I can think of at that point is just smack the crap out of him, because I was angry. And one thing I learned about this is that at that young age is that you can have different levels of angry, and it just kept getting more and more intense as the night went on. So I just told him, I said, I'm not leaving the ring. And he just stares at me, and then he kind of walks away. But then he goes back there to the entrance, and he's just standing there kind of taunting me like, you want me to get in there? You want me to get in there? And I picked the microphone up again, and I want my money. You need to go back there and get somebody and bring me the money now. So a couple of minutes later, he's still standing there. And then here comes somebody else. Apparently they have decided to go on with the show. So this figure walking toward me is none other than Pistol Pez Watley. And he's carrying a pair of boxing gloves. And I'm like, this is unique. And he gets in the ring, and he's taking his robe off, and he's putting these boxing gloves on him. And I walk over and shake his hand, and I'm like, "Hey, William Harding, big fan. Hope you win." And then here comes Rip Rogers, also with a pair of boxing gloves. And he gets in the ring, and I walk over to him and shake his hand, and like, "William Harding, big fan. Hope you win." Yeah. And then here comes the
That's like me.
Manager comes over here. Yeah. It's just all this surreal thing. I didn't really know what to do with them getting in the ring. So the arena manager comes over, and he's got 2 police officers. The manager says, "You need to get out of the ring now because they're going to go on with the show." And I said, "I'm not leaving until you pay me. I'm not getting out of this ring until you pay me." And the police officer says, "Either get out of the ring or we're going to arrest you right now." So I'm like, okay, fine. I get out of the ring. But instead of letting me go back to my seat, they escort me to the back, and they lock me up in this office/store, and they said, "Sit here," and they close the door. And I'm like, what the hell? Am I being arrested or what? There's a phone behind me, so I pick up the phone, and I call my stepmom answers, and she's a court reporter, and I said, "Look, I'm down here at the arena. I need a lawyer down here, like right." And she told me what happened, and I said, "I got in the ring with the guy. I won. They're not paying me. The police have got me locked up in the back. You need to get somebody down here now." And at that point, police officer burst in the room, put the phone. I said, "I'm calling a lawyer." He said, "Put the damn phone down." So I put it down. I said, "I'll call you back when I what's going on." And I hung the phone up. And he starts getting over on top of me about using the phone down there. So he shuts the door again. And just a few minutes later, the arena manager walks in, and he says, "I've talked to them. They don't feel like you broke the hold. They don't feel like they owe you any money. I think you just better let it go." And I said, "I'm not letting it go. You better go back there and talk to them again." So he says, "Okay." And he goes back there, and maybe I think it's about 5-10 minutes later, he comes back, and he said, "They just reiterated their position. They don't want to pay you. They think you didn't beat the time limit." And I said, "There was no time limit." He said, "They did say that if you want, you're more than welcome to stay and watch the rest of the show." Really? I mean, I did pay for a ticket. So I'm furious. And I walk out the door past the 2 police officers and give them a sour look. And I start walking back there. But before I left, there was a poster and a pencil laying there. And I asked the arena manager if I could have one of those. And he said, "Sure." And I took it out there with me. And I looked for that first guy that was in the challenge. Because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get the first 3 guys, and I'm going to have them sign this sheet. And I'm just going to sue the ICW for this. Because, I was thinking, this is BS. I don't appreciate this. I don't like being cheated. So I'm going to sue him. And I went and found the first guy, and I told him what I wanted to do, and he didn't want nothing to do with it. I mean, he was embarrassed enough about, what Bob did to him in the first place. But the other 2 guys were fine with it, and they signed it. And then somebody else asked me what was going on, and I told them, and that they signed it. And next thing I know, there's like 50 people around me signing this thing. There's just signatures all over this thing. And while I'm standing there getting this done, I can hear somebody, and I look over, and it's the sheriff of Frankfort. It's Sheriff Sam Harrod, who is a personal friend of my father, because when my dad worked on the police force, as I said before, they worked together as well. He said, "Are you Billy Harding's boy?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, tell me what's going on." And I started telling him, and I look around, and here come those 2 police, and they get me, and they tell me now I'm going to be arrested for causing a disturbance. And they take me back there, and they put me back in that same room and said, "You sit right here." So I'm sitting in this room just waiting for the inevitable handcuffs and everything else. Sam Harrod comes in, and he said, "Tell me what went on." And I told him what was going on with all of this stuff and what they had done to me afterwards. He said, "You sit right here. I'll be right back." So he's about probably 15 minutes later, he comes back in the room, and he's got Angelo Poffo with him. And Angelo looks to me and says, "All right, tell me how we're going to settle. Will you take $250? And I just kind of shook my head and I dropped my head, and I didn't want to hear it, you know. He said, how about 500? 500's a good. I considered it for a second, and then I just told him, I said, look, after what you guys put me through tonight, I'm not leaving here with less than 1,000. And he just kind of stared at me for a minute, and he said, and he just kind of like that, and he left the room, and Sam went with him. Sam said, just sit here. It'll be okay. So I'm in here for about another 10 minutes, and Sam comes in the room, and he says, follow me. So I go out with him, and the 2 police officers are there, and they're all escorting me back to the ring. And I could hear a bunch of boos coming from the auditorium. And as soon as I stepped out, it just changed to cheers. Everybody's just cheering now. And this is the part where I'm not sure if Bob and the referee and Angelo were in the ring before me or after. But anyway, I get in the ring, and they're in the ring. It's Angelo, Poffo, Bob Roop, and the referee. I thought, okay, we're going to do this again. I thought for sure we were going to do the Sugar Hole Challenge again. And Angelo takes the mic, and he starts talking to the audience, and he says, there's been a miscommunication about the time limit. And they said, in the interest of sportsmanship, we're going to go ahead and pay the boy. And he hands me this check for $1,000. And I'm looking at the check, and just for a brief second, like I told Bobby the other day, just for a brief second, I'm looking at the check, and I'm thinking to myself, where's that bag of silver dollars at?
Yeah.
So I thought the better part would just be to take the check and go, you know.
Yeah.
So I shook Angelo's hand, I shook Bob's hand, I shook the referee's hand, I thanked everybody in the audience, and I got the hell out of the ring, and I started to head back for my car. Started to get out of the ring, and everybody's surrounding me, trying to get out of the arena. They, you know, what happened? And I'm just trying to get out of there. And as soon as I get outside, there's these big, huge concrete planters outside, and there's like 7 or 8 people standing out there. I jump up on one of these things, and I just scream as loud as I can. And then I stop, and I realize that the way these guys were feeling about it, I better get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
And I just run to my car. And I just run to my car, and I'm trying to get my keys in my car, and it's just taking forever. And I finally get out of there. Yep. So now I'm feeling, you know, like, oh, the world's monster, you know, everything's great. But here's the problem, and here's something that I never mentioned before. Everything's fine, right? Wrong. Now I got to go home and face my father.
Oh man,
that's
well,
good.
So I'm driving home.
I don't want to cut you off too soon, man, but we do a little bit shorter podcast than the 605, so just kind of want to wind you back in here a little bit and reel you in a little bit. So you're in the car heading home to see Pops, huh? Go ahead.
Yeah. This is quick. I get home and I open the door and I'm dreading what's going to happen, and my stepmother's there. And I said, where's Dad? And she says, he went to the arena to get you. So now I got to sit here and wait on him to get home. And he walks in the door and he's furious. He's screaming. Then he just stops for a second, for like 5 seconds. He looks at me and says, let me see the check. So I show him the check, and it turned into one of those stories that he used to tell his bar buddies, you know, because he was a bartender. And it turned into something really great for him.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much what happened that night. And the wild thing about it is it turned into this underground story unbeknownst to me, and it's been floating out there for years.
Well, that's
because we talked about it for a couple of months in Frankfort.
Yeah, that's the question I have for you. I have heard about this sort of thing happening, but like now all of a sudden people on the internet know who William Harding is. What was it like to kind of have internet fame show up out of nowhere for you?
Bizarre. I mean, the first thing that happened was that when I did the interview with Brian on the 605, he promoted on Jim Cornette's podcast, the Jim Cornette Experience. I think it was episode 168. And he got my name wrong. He called me William Holding. I guess that was like a Freudian slip about the Sugar Hole thing.
Yeah.
But, he started talking about it, and Jim Cornette, somebody told me Jim Cornette popped on this thing, and I didn't know what popped meant. I didn't know how Jim Cornette reacted to it, so I went to listen to it. And Jim was like, did you find this guy? and Brian said, we got our arms out everywhere. And Jim says, you don't understand. This is a famous story. And my mouth just dropped to the floor. Jim Cornette knows this freaking story. This was the Dark House show.
Oh, man. Well, this is the sort of thing that goes on to...
They never talked about it again.
Yeah, well, this is the sort of thing that goes on to live in infamy, but it's kind of like almost like an insider story, because wrestlers were talking about this afterwards, like, hey, maybe this throwing guys in holds for $1,000 shit ain't what it's cracked up to be.
Man.
Yeah, well, that Marty Goldman said that pretty much put an end. He said this pretty much put an end to Carney wrestling.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that.
Yeah, because Angelo was not happy, and
well, you just made a guy.
Jim Cornette said that it. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you just made a guy who calls himself the Miser pay you $1,000.
I was waiting for that name to come up between one of you two. I was going to have to bring it up. Yes, Angelo Poffo was the Miser, so and he lived the gimmick. Hey,
William, I don't want to run you short, but we only got a couple minutes left. But I really want to thank you for taking the time to come in here. And of course, this show owes you a bigger debt than anybody out there listening knows. So I wanted to thank you for that as well. Is there anything you'd like to wrap up with in the last couple minutes?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm really appreciative of all the love that I've gotten over the last couple of years since this came out, and the emails and messages I've got from all over the world, and most especially to Bobby, who I met down there at Comic-Con, and he introduced me to Al Snow. He introduced me to Jim Cornette down there. And I think I've become really good friends with him over the last couple of years. And I just really enjoy the conversations.
Yes.
And I love this show too.
Well, thank you.
This is a great show, and everybody should be listening.
Thank you, William. I appreciate that.
I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah. Well, do one thing for me.
Appreciate you guys having me on. First,
yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Let me just do this. Yes, we have become friends, and I appreciate that, as Jeremy and I have. And here's the thing. Just let the people out there know on the Bell to Bell podcast, let the people know where they can reach you at. I know you're on Twitter. I know you got maybe some other social media. Let the people know how they can find William Harding, if you don't care. Or is that William Holding? No, let everyone know where we can find you at, my friend. Let everyone know where you're at.
Yeah, on Twitter, I'm at W Harding KY, and you can find it pretty easy. It's an open profile. And on YouTube, my channel is WDHJKY. Easy to find. Lots of sugar out there. This is a great podcast, folks. Listen to it. I listen to it every week. And thanks, guys. I really appreciate you having me on, and honored that I'm the first most.
No, we do appreciate it, sir. Thank you. Well, Bobby, you got anything you want to wrap up with?
No, thank you very much there, William. Appreciate it. Hopefully I'll talk to you soon. Jeremy, this is our first interview, and we had a good one to come on. I appreciate that. And like I said at the beginning of the show, man, I appreciate you. And let's just keep on, man. We'll just keep on knocking these podcasts out. We're having fun with it. And we're starting to make some headway. The Twitter page is doing good. The YouTube page is doing good. But just keep telling, if you're listening for the first time, we hope you enjoyed it. And tell a friend about it. And always use the hashtag if you want to, BBBB. And we'll be coming out with more and more top 10 lists and having more fun. And you might hear a rant or two here in the future. You never damn know. Yep. But the main thing is, thank you very much. And fans, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you. Our numbers keep going up. We've been having a great time doing this podcast, so thank you.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. And I just want to, guys, William is on the road, so occasionally his mic was dropping out. So sorry for any fuzz or anything you get in this episode. But, as usual, it's been our pleasure to have you listen, but it's been your pleasure to do the listening. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Bell with Bobby Blaze. You can follow the show on Twitter at BellToBellBlaze. You can also follow Bobby on Twitter at BobbyBlaze744 and Jeremy on Twitter at TheGeekishCast. To purchase one of Bobby's books, you can visit tinyurl.com/blazebook1 to purchase Pin Me, Pay Me, Have Boots, Will Travel. And you can visit tinyurl.com/blazebook2 to get I Kicked Out on 2, The Education of a Wrestler. To donate to the show's podcast hosting fees, you can visit gofundme.com/Bell to Bell podcast hosting fees. Be sure to include a hyphen in every word in Bell to Bell podcast hosting fees. If you follow and listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. Be sure to share the show with any wrestling fan you may know, and get on the Facebook page where you can keep up with Bell to Bell fans just like you. Again, thanks for listening to the program, and look for the show again next time.